Imagine 7 million years ago, in the middle of the African desert, a tiny creature stood for the first time. It wasn't human. It wasn't an ape. But from its faltering steps, something was born that would change the world. Who was the first creature to pave the way for Homo sapiens? Were all the theories about human origins wrong? And why does the silent desert of Central Africa hold our earliest secrets? This story isn't just about fossils and bones. It's a long tale of humanity's search for identity, from an unknown creature named Toomai to us today. Read the full story, and if you find any parts interesting, surprising, or even debatable, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, because perhaps the truth about who we are is still being discovered. The sun burned mercilessly over the barren lands of Chad, Central Africa. A hot wind whipped up a fine dust covering the ancient rocks, as if holding secrets never before revealed. The year was 2001, when a French paleoanthropologist named Michel Brunet set foot in a remote region virtually unknown to the outside world. With his small team, Brunet wasn't searching for gold, oil, or riches. He was searching for something far more valuable: evidence of human origins. They dug, sifted, and swept away layer after layer of parched soil that was likely millions of years old. Then, one morning hardly different from any other, an assistant's trembling voice rang out from behind a sand dune. "I found it!" From the ground, a small skull was unearthed. Cracked, brittle, and covered in mineral crust, it had a familiar shape. It had a puzzling combination: a flat, human-like face, but a small, ape-like cranium. They named it Toomai, which in the local language means hope of life. Brunet was stunned. Radiometric dating indicates the skull is about 7 million years old. This means Toomai lived long before Homo sapiens officially appeared in the fossil record. In fact, long before species like Homo habilis or Australopithecus. But there was something even more surprising. The location of the discovery, Chad, is located much further west than the Rift Valley region of East Africa, long considered the cradle of humanity. This wasn't just an archaeological find. It was a scientific explosion. What was a creature like Toomai doing here? Was he part of the human lineage? Or just a distant relative lost in history? Brunet had many questions, but one thing was clear. All the old theories about the origins of Homo sapiens were now beginning to crumble. Toomai opened the door to a much broader story. A story of the struggle for survival, the vicissitudes of nature, and the fate of the species that would one day call itself human. But this was only the beginning. Desert dust still clung to Toomai's skull when it was brought to the laboratory in France. The scientists sat in a circle, gazing at the tiny object as if watching a ghost from the past. One by one, they noted the shape of its jaw, the location of its vertebral openings, and its facial structure. The longer they examined it, the more they felt they were seeing something that shouldn't be there. The structure of Toomai's vertebral openings suggested it likely walked upright. This was surprising because such a creature shouldn't have existed 7 million years ago. Homo sapiens itself only appeared about 300,000 years ago. Whatever this creature was, it was a faint shadow of the humans to come. Too ancient for Homo, but too advanced for an ape. Speculation arose. Could Toomai be the first ancestor of Homo sapiens? Or was it a failed evolutionary path, a dead end that never led to us? Not all scientists agreed. Some called Toomai simply an ancient primate with a strange coincidence. But others, more daring, began to propose a startling theory: that the human lineage did not begin in East Africa as had long been believed, but rather more extensively, encompassing western regions like Chad. Behind the walls of the laboratory, the discussion grew heated. But far from the hustle and bustle, in the jungles of ancient Africa 7 million years ago, a drama was unfolding. Amidst the savanna slowly turning into forest, a herd of small, human-looking creatures began to forage, crawl, and then rise. They walked on two legs, perhaps unsteadily, but they stood. A simple act, yet one that would change the fate of the world. But living in that era was not a matter of courage. Africa's climate was becoming unstable. Vast plains were drying, rivers were receding, and bloodthirsty predators were stalking every move. Anyone who wanted to survive had to adapt. And it was under this pressure that evolution began to sharpen its options. In Tumi's body, a small change lurked. A gene, or perhaps two, began to redraw the biological map of his species. Not immediately human, but paving the way. It was a long journey that would one day be traversed by the strange creatures known as Ardipithecus, Australopithecus, and Homo habilis. But that was all still a long way off. For now, Tumi was just one of many creatures that time would forget. But his footprints had been left. And someone someday will seek him out again. Millions of years after Tumi disappeared from the face of the earth, Africa remained the main stage of the evolutionary drama. Nature continued to change. Vast plains cracked, rivers shifted course, and the climate danced between wet and dry. Amidst these brutal changes, species after species emerged, and then became extinct. But some survived, with more upright bodies, slightly enlarged brains, and emerging social instincts. Around 4.4 million years ago, a creature called Ardipithecus ramidus appeared in Ethiopia. It wasn't human, but it wasn't ape either. It lived in trees and occasionally descended to the ground. Its body wasn't yet fully erect, but it was on its way. One more step toward Australopithecus, the figure that would become an icon of the transition. Then came Lucy, Australopithecus afarensis. Her fossils were discovered in 1974, and are about 3.2 million years old. Lucy walked upright, lived in groups, and began to develop forms of communication never seen before. She was no longer just a survivalist. She was beginning to experience the world differently. Time marched on. Nature is merciless to those who adapt slowly. Those who can think survive. Those who can cooperate survive. And somewhere between 2 million and 300,000 years ago, Homo began to emerge. Homo habilis with its skilled hands. Homo erectus with its ability to control fire. And finally Homo sapiens. But Homo sapiens is not the end. It is merely the latest form of a struggle that began 7 million years ago, when Tumi first stood and gazed upon the African horizon. We are not the descendants of victors. We are the descendants of those strong enough to survive, intelligent enough to learn, and fortunate enough not to become extinct. Within every human being today flows a very ancient heritage. Not just blood, but the courage of creatures who once lived in worlds we cannot imagine. Tumi is long dead, buried beneath the layers of the earth. But from his fragile bones, the first page of the great book of humanity unfolds. And that page at last is readable again.